Welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and today we're looking at the first part of the Series 14 finale, The Legend of Ruby Sunday. It's an episode that promises a lot of answers and delivers more questions, which I don't necessarily mind.
Yeah, that seems to be the RTD way.
Yeah,
Um,
so I want to flag this immediately. This is a bit of an odd one for us. Um, it's the first time on this podcast that we're reviewing the first part of a multi-part story without knowing how it ends. So I hazard a guess that we're going to be doing quite a lot of speculation
mm,
in this episode, and a lot of what we're about to say may end up proving very, very wrong. Now, I
yeah,
don't normally say this for something like our predictions episode because that is like that is or that it's what it says on the tin. We are predicting and speculating, but with this, we're trying to
yeah,
review something that we don't know how it ends.
mm,
So I think that in terms of it should be worth noting that when we discuss the potential of what's here, it's not necessarily us commenting on the episode itself because I don't want like weeks or years from now potentially someone to be listening to this back and going they just completely misinterpreted the episode, they've got this all wrong. It's like, well, that's part of the fun, I think, of this moment, of this
mm,
nebulous zone that we're in, where we've been given a massive mystery box that's sort of been resolved by this point, but we're not sure yet. But we also have
mm,
heaps of questions leading into next week's Empire of Death. Um,
yeah,
but for now, looking at this as setup, it's
mm,
really, really good setup.
yeah. Um, I guess you may wonder, does this story, like this episode specifically, stand on its own because it is very much a setup, and obviously we've got a part two to go here. And I was thinking about that a little bit when I was watching the episode again. Um, I still think it's probably going to work most effectively in context with part two. That's what I predict. But given that it is a part one and it's mostly doing setup, it's still pretty damn strong.
Yeah.
I think both
Well,
on a sort of a micro scale because there's nice little moments kind of in it. But
mm,
even generally, like an episode itself, I don't like it. Doesn't sort of totally rest on the strength of that ending. It.
no.
Obviously, the ending is a huge part, but there's still good stuff leading up to it, I think.
Well, I actually want to jump ahead to the ending real quick because
Okay, so are we gonna do this?
we
Are we
might as
doing it
well.
now?
We might as well. So, obviously, the ending reveals the big bad of this season. The one who waits is in fact Sutek, who is a returning villain from the Pyramids of Mars from 1975. So this is Sutek's first on-screen appearance in 49 years. There were some people I saw online last week who had predicted this. They had seen Sutek coming. I had seen Sutek in at least one um uh like thumbnail of like it like with one of those red circle with an arrow thumbnails being like it's Sutek. But what I think this episode does the best is it managed to predict its audience because right off the
Mm,
jump, like before the cold open even happens, the episode teases that S Triad is an anagram of TARDIS and
yeah.
that the character's name of Susan could be a
Mm,
reference to the Doctor's granddaughter. Now, these
yeah.
were things that people. And these are the kind of things that you could notice from like trailer footage and then go, "Oh, look at this connection! I'm so smart." And the episode knows it because again, it teases them both at the start, and then by the end, it's like, nope, they were all wrong. They were deliberate misleads for this
Mm,
other thing, which is equally clever.
yeah.
And I really respect the episode for that because as soon as the episode was like, yeah, obviously it's not going to TARDIS, I kind of went, oh, that wasn't something that you were attempting to keep in your back pocket as being a clever reveal in the end of the episode. You're just flagging that from the jump. Okay, I don't know where this is going anymore.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's pretty wild what they've done. The whole sort of, let's be honest, kind of taunting the audience
Yeah.
Similarly to how Sutek kind of taunts the Doctor, it is pretty clever, very meta, but it's not obnoxious or annoying because I think in a lot of these sort of circumstances, when you get too meta, it can be kind of frustrating, but it's not here. It all works really, really well. And it's sort of mapping on the meta quality onto or everything we know about the world building of Doctor Who and the characters. I think it's quite good. There are even little moments like right at the end when all the well, not all the puzzle pieces, but some of the puzzle pieces were coming together, and we realized, oh, it's Sutek. I actually went back and thought, oh, do I believe that? Does it all? All these things, do they seem kind of coincidental? But the more I thought about it, I realized no, this all does make sense. And to prove that to myself, I actually went and watched episode 4 of the Pyramids of Mars again the other
Mm.
night, and watching that actually makes all of this stuff make even more sense. Like there's no indication that Sutek in Pyramids of Mars is part of like the pantheon, like explicitly, but there's enough clues to figure out. Oh, this character is really powerful. There's a great moment, and I've written down the quote here where where the so the Doctor's in the Pyramids of Mars with Sutek,
Uh-huh.
and the the TARDIS magically appears in a building, and Sutek just basically does that by with his mind essentially.
Right.
Um, and the Doctor actually then says to him, if you can do that by mental force, Sutek, then nothing can be beyond you. So
Ah.
if there was gonna be a villain to give these, phenomenal cosmic powers, it makes sense to give it to Sutek, I think.
Yeah.
Um, and there's more details of how well it all fits together, which I'll get to later on. But
Yeah.
the point is, RTD took a pretty big risk,
Yeah.
bringing back a returning villain, which is Sutek. He's not one of the
He's not.
lesser known villains, but to
No.
bring back a villain that only appeared in one story previously, that's there's a fair bit of courage, I think,
Hmm.
involved in that, and finding a way to sort of insert that villain into the world that RTD is creating, and like the fact that he pulls it off as well as he does, that's
Mm.
pretty admirable, and
And
the
of course, we'll
effect
see.
is really shocking.
Yeah, and we'll see more of it next week when we are able to
Mm,
further characterize this version of Sutek. But like, it would have been so easy, especially considering the revival era, to just make it the Beast from the Satan Pit, for example, because
yeah,
that's
and I
I would wager a character that the majority of new Who fans will be familiar with.
yeah. And he also the beast like itself, it seems like a pantheon creature,
Yeah,
right? Like this, it's not just the devil, it's not just Satan, it's all of the, you know, dark underworld rulers in all of throughout all civilizations throughout the universe. So that would map onto it pretty well.
mm,
Um, but they've gone with Sutek, which is interesting. And also did point this out to you, Karf. I think I said it to you and also Sam. There's a line in the Pyramids of Mars where it's implied that Sutek is the devil because the Doctor says to him, your name is abominated in every civilized world, whether that name be Set, Satan, Sados, and then he gets cut off at the end. But
he does. Yeah.
the point is, um, I don't know what that implies for this sort of manifestation of Sutek. I don't know whether RTD is saying
We'll
that
find out.
that Sutek is the core of what the Beast is. Do you know what I mean? Like, did Sutek come
Yeah.
from the Beast, or did the Beast come from Sutek? It's
Well,
yeah.
given that the Beast apparently existed before time, I would
Mm,
wager it's the other way around.
mm,
But if that is the case, it might just be like it might just turn out that when the Fourth Doctor says that, he's speaking not literally but metaphorically. Like there is a version of you, a god of death, within heaps of different civilizations
yeah.
and theologies. But let's get back to the Pantheon really quick because
Mm.
we do get like a string of name drops throughout the
Yeah, that
ending
was cool.
monologue. So the full name is apparently the Pantheon of Discord. Um,
Mm.
and this has apparently been a thing for a really long time. Um, so let me see. I've got the TARDIS fandom up here. Um, okay, so before this point, apparently there was an unofficial name for creatures like the Toymaker and Maestro, and it was gods of chaos.
Mm.
Um, it's a name that's identical in meaning to Pantheon of Discord.
Mm.
And Pantheon was mentioned in Devil's Court, obviously.
Mm.
Uh, but there was a thing called the Pantheon from the Sarah Jane Adventures.
Mm.
When the Trickster is mentioned
Yeah.
in this episode, that's what that's referring to.
Yeah.
So it looks like Russell has like sort of combined a bunch of different all powerful cosmic threats into
Mhm.
one group with this, which I don't think is an unwise thing to do.
Yeah, I
We
agree.
hear about the Toymaker, we hear about Maestro, we get the Trickster, obviously. There's other characters in this that get brought up. The Mara is
Yep.
one.
Yep.
I think those were all that are named dropped specifically in this episode, but other characters are things like the Reprobate,
Mm.
Incenser, Doubt, Dread, and also Krampus.
Really?
Yes, from a comic called Imaginary Enemies. It's a Doctor Light Doctor Who comic featuring Amy and Rory, and also uh, the Before River song version of River, and in it they fight Krampus, who uh,
Oh man.
is some I it looks like it's a really weird comic, but in that comic, Krampus is depicted to have insane godlike powers, and at some point, uh, apparently was named as part of the pantheon at some point. Um,
That's interesting.
yeah, the Mara is from Snake Dance, which is a
And
Fifth
Kinder.
Doctor story, and Kinder as well.
Yeah.
So it's great to have this confirmation because it does kind of like set this up as like, hey, you know how hi, my name is Russell D Davies. You know how I've said that we're going to skew more towards fantasy stuff. Well, guess what? The show's been doing that for decades, which I kind
Yeah.
of like. It's just like I said, it's just making like a cohesion out of some of the more outlandish, seemingly unrelated um characters
Mm.
from among the Doctor Who universe.
Yep.
Which is pretty decent world building. Obviously, we'll see how it all wraps up
Mm.
in the next part. Um, so that's obviously the big mystery box that we have set up at the end of this story. And
Mm.
we get little bits and pieces of Sutek's plan, but we don't really know the specifics of it. We know that it involved the TARDIS in some way. We know that it involved Susan Triad, and that she and see here's the difficult part. We A lot of the stuff in this episode kind of seems like an answer, but it's not really yet.
Mm.
You know, we have this mystery of why is Susan Triad being observed in every single time Zone the
Mm.
Doctor lands, and then you finish this episode and you go, oh, it was Sutek, and
Mm.
then you think for a moment and you go, wait, why was this a part of Sutek's plan? What does it accomplish? Was it just to draw the Doctor back to 2024? But then why did he need that? You know,
Yep.
there's quite a lot that still hasn't been answered yet.
Yep. And I think in a way, a lot of those things they didn't worry me, but
No, no, no.
they sort of made me a bit more alert because I thought there's a lot of really weird things happening here, a lot of strange coincidences, and if RTD had not set this thing up, like the Pantheon up properly, if he hadn't put in the work of the world building, it could have turned out really badly. And even now, though I have complete faith that he's going to make it all come together, we still don't know how it's all going to work together in the end. There's again, like not on RTD to do it all well, but as you say, there's just so many things up in the air at the moment. It makes us, I think, as fans, kind of tense to thinking, God, how the hell is he going to resolve X, Y, and Z? You know.
Mm.
With that said, I'm really glad I actually watched the part 4 of Pyramids of Mars, because it helped sort of not clear up these mysteries, but it helped sort of solidify my faith in RTD to be able to work them out. Because again, if you bring back a villain like Sutek, and then if you have all these, name drops of villains, it could very easily be just a really bad bit of sort of pandering fan service that doesn't go anywhere. But I do think RTD has thought really carefully about this.
Mm.
So basically, I'll try to summarize this as best I can, bearing in mind part 4 of Pyramids of Mars that I watched. That's the first time I've watched it in years. And
Okay.
anyway, but basically, Sutek is part of a species called the Osirans.
Hmm.
His brother Horus, which comes from Egyptian mythology, trapped him in the Pyramid of Mars. He was basically paralyzed for that whole time. He could only control things with his mind. And the whole area is basically a prison, and the doctor and one of Sutek's servants are basically trying to get to Sutek first and have to go through all these obstacles and complete all these puzzles. Um, so that's useful, I think, because
Hmm. Yeah.
it implies that Sutek and the species that he comes from, and the pantheon generally, they enjoy things like games and tormenting people. Like, obviously, for Sutek being in prison, that has a practical purpose. But the fact that there's all these um, traps indicates that they enjoy games. I mean, obviously, the toy maker is the one who maybe enjoys the most, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Like, they all have that sort of sense about them. The sense of making playthings out of mortals,
Yes.
essentially. So the fact that all of these coincidences are happening, that this woman name is Susan, that it's, oh no, it's actually Sutek, and also she's been following the doctor around for ages, and it's just happens to be 2024, and you got Ruby there. Like, all these things could have ended or could have been put together really sloppily, but given what we know about Sutek, it does all make sense. And even if the point of getting the doctor to that place in that that exact place, exact time, even if it's just in a way to try and torment the doctor in a cruel, heartless way, that still tracks. So I think RTD has put in the legwork. He hasn't just put in Sutek just to, for fan service. I really think he's thought this through, and that's actually one of the reasons I feel very, very excited about it.
Yeah. I do want to quickly go through some other. I don't know when is a good time to bring this up, but
Hmm.
and look, here's the thing. I am, as a result of this episode, I am now really lagging behind in the points department from our predictions. We'll get to that at the end of the episode. One of my few predictions I've got left that might still happen is surprise master reveal. Now, the reason I am clinging to this is because right before Susan Triad begins reading off the monitor, the auto cue at the end of the episode, we can hear the leitmotif of the Master from
Hmm.
the John Sim era. I do not believe this is a coincidence. I don't necessarily think that that means Susan Triad is the Master, but it could mean that by the end of the next episode, we will have a little tease that someone in that scene is the Master. And I hate to sound like one of those, like I said, the red circle, red arrow,
Hmm.
Easter egg hunters who sees any little grain of sand and goes, "This must mean this returning character."
Hmm.
But like, come on, Murray Gold is very good with his music, and especially with his leitmotifs, and he always uses them really effectively. There's a really great example in the episode Dark Water, where you see like the Doctor asks a question like, what's happening here? I'm missing something obvious. The doors close, and you see that the windows are shaped like Cyberman eyes, and in that moment, the Cyberman motif plays. The music choices in Doctor Who, especially when Murray Gold have been involved, have always been incredibly deliberate. Gallifrey's theme only ever plays when the Doctor's talking about Gallifrey. The Cyberman theme only ever plays when Cybermen are being talked about. I Am the Doctor only ever plays when the 11th Doctor is about to do or say something heroic. There are choices that are made that are constant. And if the Master isn't revealed to be in this story, it'll be the only time ever that this motif has been used without the Master's involvement.
Do you think this is the challenge I'll put to you on this?
Yeah.
Do you think that it's only there to deliberately misdirect the audience?
Maybe it's another one of those misdirects. It could be, yeah. I don't know, because I've got a huge list of like rumors that people had about this episode before it went out, and it was stuff like Susan Foreman will be back. The Trickster's going to be in this. Sean Pertwee's going to play the Third Doctor. Davros is going to be in it, and it's going to all this stuff. And I'm like, where did you get this from?
Yeah,
like,
whoa, those are real swings.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not gonna lie.
Exactly, yeah. And I know you're not a Marvel fan, but it really feels like the end of WandaVision, where people were seeing like any little clue and going, "It must be Mephisto," and then being let down when the finale didn't have Mephisto in it. So I don't want to get my hopes up too high for the Master because there's already so much going on, and there is a worry that throwing the Master in will make things a bit too complicated and too much.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's I mean, it's kind of interesting, but if you look at the episodes of this season generally, the pacing has been quite interesting. It hasn't been bad. It's just been it's just been quite different episode to episode. So, with 73 yards, it starts out kind of slow because it's just in the pub, but then we keep jumping in time, so it feels a bit more sped up. In this episode, there is a lot of time devoted to trying to solve all of Ruby's mysteries. So, and it's not bad. It's really compelling stuff. But I noticed, this is actually taking quite a lot of time to do this. We're really building up to something here.
Yeah.
So it's possible that part 2 is going to have like an insane pacing because we've got basically a promise of the end of the world sort of scenario. But even if they do that, like, or maybe even especially if they do that, how are they going to work in like a master reveal? They'd really have to be careful because Sutek himself, like that reveal, that's massive, right? And there's a lot to even thematically to explore there.
They put a huge amount of importance on it.
Yeah. So how the hell are they going to put in a master cameo here?
That's true. Yeah.
Like,
the one thing I am potentially flagging as a probability is Susan, and I've already mentioned this, but this episode is the second time this season that they've brought her up, and it really feels deliberate. I don't know if it was just to bait the audience with an "Is Susan Triad the Doctor's granddaughter" thing. It might have just been for that. But, and I do want to mention this now, this episode also gives us a huge hint at the First Doctor and Susan relationship maybe not being what we thought it was. There's a throwaway line where the Doctor seems to imply that his granddaughter met him, but he hadn't had children in his timeline yet. It's a throwaway. It's not a throwaway thing, but it's like a line that is said very, very casually. But the implications of that was that the Susan is his granddaughter from the future of his timeline. Is there anything in the show that would dispute that? Off the top of my head, I know off the top of my head, I can think that the Doctor has mentioned that he knows what it's like to be a parent in the past. That could also be, his children traveled back in time and met him along this timeline as well. That might just be what that is.
Yeah.
But in terms of how the First Doctor and Susan relationship was characterized, obviously a lot of the First Doctor era is missing. So we don't have all the information. But like they said that, and I went, oh, that might. It's a 60+ year show. If you do anything to imply something about lore, it could inevitably conflict with something. Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think there's anything that would contradict that idea, now that I think about it. Certainly nothing is springing to mind, and given how, weird time is in Doctor Who, for understandable reasons, it is possible. Because, like, the Doctor in the first few seasons, like, obviously a lot of the lore hadn't been established. I don't even think they'd established that he was a Time Lord at that
No.
point. So, there's a lot of mystery surrounding him as a character. So yeah, your idea, I think, is at least possible, maybe even plausible.
Well, that's good to hear.
Hmm.
The fact that there's not immediately something that is like a red flashing light on the control board, being like, "Uh oh, this is canon breaking. Look out, Russell."
Yeah,
Is
I
good to know.
don't like I said, I think honestly, I mean, definitely more than Chibnall, but maybe even more than Moffat. I think I trust RTD to play a bit fast and loose with the canon. Like, I think he can do it, and do it quite well, and he's proven that so far, because nothing that we've really seen in this season terribly contradicts the show, I don't think. Even all the
Well,
name drops of all the Pantheon, I don't think
no, I don't think so. Well,
does
it might have,
much.
if Susan is or was from the Doctor's personal future,
Hmm.
it might go some ways to explaining why we haven't seen her again, right? Because
Mm.
think about it, the whole deal with the Time War was like time travel was used to the point where it was genuinely damaging the timeline, and the Daleks and the Time Lords were using it to completely rewrite victories and defeats.
Mm.
And also, all of Gallifrey has been destroyed twice now.
Mm.
If the Doctor is the last of the Time Lords, minus the Master, obviously, but if the Doctor
Mm.
is the last of the Time Lords and there are no other Time Lords left and Gallifrey is gone, it means that there are no Time Lords left for him to have children with. So,
Mm.
you know
Um,
what he was talking about in Devil's Cord might be true. You know, the ripple
yeah, didn't he
effects
say that?
from
Yeah, that.
the ripple effects from the Master destroying Gallifrey and or the Time War might mean that Susan doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
At the time, I was sort of like, well, it's kind of like a hand wavy thing, but if this is the new law, then it really makes a lot of sense.
Mm. I mean, and it is interesting. I mean, it would, if that's true, then would that create a paradox with all the First Doctor adventures? Because
Look, it's the kind of thing where it's like I think that the nature of the Time War having rewritten like reality so much, the ripple effects have already like when the Time Lords were there, they were doing their best to mitigate that damage. Because I think
yeah.
people have been pointing out for a while that in the classic era, they watched the destruction of the Earth, and it was nothing like it is depicted in the Ninth Doctor episode, "The End of the World."
Mm.
When Russell was asked about that, he was like, "Oh, the Time War had ripple effects." I assume this
Right.
is another one of those instances where
Yeah.
Susan
I mean,
does and doesn't exist due to the way that the Time Lords and the time travel and all this stuff
yeah,
operates.
it's timey-wimey stuff,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Yeah.
I could believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Wh-
interesting because the last time we've
yeah.
seen Susan on screen was in the Five Doctors, as far
Five
as I know.
Doctors. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Um,
yeah.
I do want to, while we're talking about like really minute stuff that doesn't really matter. I've
Mm.
seen people online talking about like the opening to the episode and being like, "Why does the Doctor fly into unit? Why do they open up the doors for him?
Mm.
Why doesn't he just materialize in there?" And a lot of people are seeing that as like, "Well, this is shit." But I see it as, hang on a minute, you're forgetting the law that was established in the Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary special. I don't know if you remember, but they mentioned in that they found a way to TARDIS-proof the Tower of London, so that the Doctor couldn't get into the Black
Mm.
Archive and take all the technology from them. Now, if they could do it once, they can do it again. And we've seen
Yeah.
there that the TARDIS proofing absolutely works. So it's
Hmm.
very, very feasible that the unit's headquarters are TARDIS proofed. But he
Yeah, I
called
mean,
ahead and was like, "I'm coming," and they were like, oh, "Okay, okay." I think it's said here that the gold protocols. Let's activate the gold
hmm,
protocols. Let's get the TARDIS in here.
yeah.
Like, I genuinely appreciate that as like a uh like as units law and technology being consistent. It works.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like, it's already been established, like, we've had 2 instances now, of the TARDIS getting flown in by helicopter. So,
Yeah.
obviously, there's something going on there, and I know that, um, in the 60th anniversary special, it almost was like it seemed like a fun callback, but actually no, it's just a part of the lore and and
Mm.
kind of an important one. So yeah, I'm not bothered by that. Um, I mean, even if I didn't know about that detail from the 50th anniversary special, I don't think I would have been too bothered by it. But now that
Mm.
you mention it, that just makes even more sense.
Yeah. We also have a brief reference to the 14th Doctor when uh, Garth was talking to Rose. Apparently, she considers the 14th Doctor her uncle, which
Hmm.
is a quite nice
Hmm.
bit of like character stuff, I think.
Yeah.
I also a lot of it. There have obviously been a lot of memes, and it was inevitably going to happen where it's like, oh, this big world-ending thing is happening, and the 14th Doctor's just going to sit around and do nothing. Um, there's 2 ways you can interpret it. One is he's got faith that the 15th Doctor will handle it, and because this
Hmm.
is his basically regeneration appointed downtime, he needs to therapize
Hmm.
himself, so he's got to sit out. But I kind of like the implication that whenever something happens on Earth that is like huge and everyone would hear about, it's an instance of Donna's bizarre magic kicking in where
Hmm.
she somehow misses the whole thing and the
Hmm.
14th Doctor just happens to be with her at the time.
Hmm.
I love the idea of like
Hmm.
just the 14th Doctor and Donna, like, I don't know, like they accidentally lock themselves in a cellar or something during this entire thing, and
Hmm.
by the time they get out, all the suit tech stuff has already been sorted out. It's just,
Yeah.
and you can also see that as like a timey-wimey thing as well, so that the 14th Doctor has no memory of these events once he becomes the 15th Doctor again.
It's possible. I mean, I guess there is obviously a bit of a risk because that it's not
Yeah.
an unfair question to ask.
No, no.
But I think again, I think RTD has done the legwork enough to still sort of make that all work.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I'm not a fair point, but I'm not too bothered by it myself.
Yeah. And we also got a brief reference to the Brigadier, which was genuinely quite nice.
Hmm.
It's interesting because I don't think we've ever had a reference like this to the Brigadier where we talk about him being a father. Like, obviously, Kate's been
Hmm.
a character in this show now for over a decade.
Yeah.
But like, she's always been like head of unit and also the Brigadier's um,
Hmm.
daughter. But we've never really thought about her as the Brigadier's kid. I don't think we've ever had a reference to her childhood like this.
Hmm.
So, like, hearing that he used to sit her down by the fire and tell all of these tales of his time with the Doctor, it's genuinely quite heartwarming.
Hmm. Yeah, it is really when you think about it. Um, it was a nice little moment, I
Mm.
think. And not too heavy-handed either. Like
No,
the sentimentality's there, but it doesn't have to work too hard. It just kind of occurs naturally, which is really kind of great.
it's one of the more effortless nods to the Brigadier that we've had, and quite a lot of them have been very painstakingly shoehorned in the past. So it's nice to see this one here that
Mm,
does a good job.
for sure.
Um, Now, talking about some of the more meaty subject matter, we've only really been talking about minor stuff for a moment. The character of Susan herself is an interesting one. Obviously, there's a lot we still don't know about her, and it's a little tragic that at least from her perspective, she didn't think that, like, she just thought she was a normal person and a genuinely nice person by the looks of things. Like,
Mm,
it didn't seem like she was being very malicious, and at least like on face value, all the stuff she was talking about with, oh, all us billionaires are doing heaps to, like, keep the rest of you down, and now that's going to
mm,
change. It seemed like she was genuinely trying to do some good, and
mm,
it's what makes her turn as a pawn of Sutek all the more heartbreaking.
mm. Yeah, it's like, and maybe that is part of the, again, the cruel sort of mockery that
mm.
Sutek is sort of partaking in. It's like, oh, you thought a human being could be genuinely kind and want to effectively break down the system. Nope, she's a vessel for a dark elder god that's going to destroy the world. Ha ha! Take that, Doctor.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Um, and speaking of those things, it's also nice to see Mel doing some undercover work.
Yeah, that was cool.
Like, we only got like glimpses in the giggle of what her role at unit was. It's good to know that she's doing some field work
Yeah.
in her like capacity with all the experience that she's had.
Mm.
Um, Here's the thing: is Susan Sutek itself, or is it another like Harbinger style like
I
pawn?
think it.
Because
I think
it's
it's more the latter, and the reason I say that is because in the Pyramid of Mars, there's this one particular character who becomes a vessel for Sutek. He becomes possessed.
okay.
Um, uh, to the point that there's actually a really quite tragic part of the plot where it's him and his brother. I think they're like digging at a like some ancient Egyptian site, and he keeps saying, oh, but no, we've got to go back. He's my brother, and the doctor really quite harshly says, "Your brother is dead. He's gone now that
Um,
Sutek has possessed him." So that would make sense if Susan Triad is just being possessed. There's a lot of, I mean, again, like there's a lot of speculation that you can make there. Was Susan Triad like actually created by Sutek? Was she a person that Sutek just possessed? Did Sutek put her in some sort of time travel thing to make her appear in all these different eras? It could be almost anything at this point. But again, I'm not too worried because that would all track with
mm.
the level of power that Sutek has as this sort of terrifying elder god.
Well, it will also. I mean, the comparison to the comparison of this as the season mystery box to Clara Oswald's Impossible Girl is obvious and apparent, right? But now that we know that Sutek has been using the TARDIS in some way, that kind of tracks because
Hmm.
the whole reason that Clara got splintered across the Doctor's timeline in the first place is because she jumped into his time frame in the TARDIS control room.
Hmm.
So now, if Sutek has been inhabiting the TARDIS for some time, yeah, he would have been able to find some way to utilize the TARDIS to split Susan Triad across history as well. It's like, if that ends up
Hmm.
being how it happened, that's incredible.
Yeah. Um, and again, as I said, in Pyramid of Mars, he's able to move the TARDIS with his mental force, which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
So if we're living, or the characters are living in a universe where the walls between this reality and another reality of the Pantheon are breaking down, um, it's certainly, I think, actually quite probable that Sutek just found the right moment to sort of break through that barrier and sort of slip into the TARDIS and make like a copy of it, or to do something weird with it anyway. Um, it all again comes together. It does beg the question. I think I wrote this down too. Like, when was it that Sutek, took control of the TARDIS, or sort of crossed the barrier into this universe?
Mm. I think,
Yeah, it's a
based
good
on
question.
the stuff that we've seen, I think an obvious answer to that is when the Doctor invoked the superstition of salt at the edge of the universe in Wild
Mm,
Blue Yonder. At the very
yeah.
least, like, Like having the Doctor straight up comment on that and being like, "I invoked a superstition here. I wonder what I let in."
Hmm.
That would seem to
Hmm.
imply that that's when it happened.
Yeah,
But it
that
could
could
also
be.
be, it could also be revealed to be, hey, you know how in Pyramids of Mars I used my power to just bring the TARDIS in? I left a bit of
Hmm.
myself in it when I did that. And it could just be like this 49-year-old plot thread that becomes a plot thread right now. It could be that as well.
Can I just I want to bring back something. I want to go back to a line which I've written down here because it was interesting.
Mhm.
There's a line that Susan Triad says. She says, "I dream of worlds with orange skies," and the first thing I thought was,
Ooh.
"Is that a reference to Gallifrey?"
Hmm.
Because isn't it established that they have orange skies? And further,
Yeah, it's a burnt orange sky, yeah.
was it'll be interesting. Well, either you or me will have to go back and take a look. Was that moment when she said, "I dream of orange skies"? Was that when we heard the Master theme?
No.
Okay, so it was a different moment.
Actually, I don't think
Because
it
it's
was, but I'll
because it's
check
during
that
that
now.
whole monologue that,
Yeah, I'll check that now.
yeah, um, God, that'd be interesting.
I mean, if that is the case, I really wish they would have picked uh the Gallifrey theme to play in that moment.
Hmm.
Here we go. I'm listening to it now.
Yep.
No, she doesn't say anything.
During that period. Okay.
During the
Um.
specific moment when the Master Vainglorious plays, she's not saying anything.
Right. Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I felt the orange skies. I'm sure that a reference to something else.
It could be the
From this.
skies of the planet that Boom was set on.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
I can't remember if the sky in that was like noticeably
Orange.
orange.
Yeah. That's. I think
But
I had that feeling as well.
it
But
could also just be I dream of alien worlds because I'm
yeah.
occasionally an alien.
Yeah. But like, I just think orange skies. Like she said that specifically. I know this might be just one of the wacky conspiracies, but I have to believe that means something.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Also, I'm sorry, I'm just going through a bunch of notes here that
Yeah,
I've
that's
written.
fine.
But there's something interesting. Susan says during her, I think it's during her big, "Oh, here's my solution to the world's problems" speech. She says, "I dare to hope." Now that's something that older Ruby says when she's standing in front of the TARDIS at the end of 73 yards. Um, again,
Hmm.
coinky dink, maybe, but
Could be, yeah.
I remember that line specifically from that episode, and I thought, again, like, it can't just be a coincidence, right? Geez, that exact phrase.
Well, they were
Um,
both written by Russell, so maybe.
yeah, who knows, again, or it could just be more misdirection. Who knows?
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
So, so you know how occasionally throughout the season we've heard the TARDIS making like a groaning noise,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Which is
apparently that
weird
is like
because they'd normally go with the cloister bell. It's weird that they got a
yes,
new sound.
indeed, yeah. So I think it's more like that groan is specifically because Sutek has been infesting it. Um, the first
Mm,
time we heard that noise was in Wild Blue Yonder.
wow, okay.
So it does make me think that the salt
Mm,
thing is
was
what let Sutek in.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
Oh,
What?
wait a minute. Okay, so now I'm looking at like the miscellaneous notes section here.
Mm,
Um, and this is gonna lead us into my favorite scene of the episode, which is the time window
mm,
um scene and how like the atmosphere in that is so good.
mm.
But here we go. So I'm just gonna read this note. Unit calculate the distance of the CCTV footage that Ruby has of her mother at the church during the night she was abandoned in 2004 was filmed 66.7 meters away from the church. So the camera was 66.7 meters away.
Is that 73 yards?
When converted, this is 73 yards.
Oh man.
Oh,
Oh, Russell. Jesus Christ. Um, that's interesting. I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but I'm sure that'll get the fan base, you know, crazy to unpack that.
yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
Let's get to the time window scene. This
yeah.
is the scene where they're trying to decipher who Ruby's mother is.
Hmm.
There's a lot to unpick in this scene. It's the scene that lasts the longest of any scene in this episode.
Yeah.
It's and it's also like what the episode is named after. This is
Yeah.
like the most concrete scene in the episode, and I just adore it. Like the way that like I said, the atmosphere, the pacing of the scene,
Mm.
like the how emotionally involved everyone is, the tension, like the when the swarm appears as well, like
Yeah.
the dread you feel when you hear old mate, I don't remember his name, but the unit guy who gets killed, like when you start hearing his voice and it gets really creepy. It's just such an amazing scene.
Yeah. It's pretty good. Um, there was something with that scene. I wrote this massive chunky paragraph about this, but basically, I wondered, does it make sense with a potentially world threat going on? Does it make sense for UNIT to spend its time and resources trying to sort out this mystery?
Well, they don't know
Now
it is a world-ending event at that time, do they? They just all they know is that there's a woman who's
that they
looks
need
like
to keep
other women.
eyes on.
Yeah,
I mean, and it all comes together because we realize, oh, at the very least, like the Ruby Sunday stuff and the Susan Triad stuff could be connected, and also with this Ruby Sunday stuff, there's a genuine threat there, so that makes sense by the time
yeah.
we get to that point. But I just wondered, at the beginning, why they humored the Doctor, because they were kind of building up the Susan Triad investigation to be, as you say, not world-ending, but still pretty important. So why did they do that? But once I sort of thought through it and certainly watched, the episode a second time, I think again there's enough legwork in the writing to justify all of it for a couple of reasons. I think this is a technicality, but I think it's important. Um, they established that they still have like over an hour before Susan Triad gives her speech, and given that they've got Mel undercover, you think what else could they have done in that time?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, what were they going to do? They were going to get Unit to storm this
Hmm.
studio where they're recording it. How are they going to do that? So they've got the time to do it. You've got the Doctor coming in and asking, can we do this? And it's implied even that he's already talked to Unit about sorting it out because he's got the surprise where it's like, oh, photos of Ruby. So um, so maybe there's like, if anyone like if Kate's going to trust the authority of anybody, it's going to be the Doctor. Like when the
Well,
Doctor
yeah,
says,
that's what I was going to say as well. Like he's earned that reputation amongst
yeah,
unit at this point.
yeah. So even if it does seem just like a more sentimental thing, um, there's Kate knows there's probably more than that, and
Mm.
she trusts the Doctor enough to make those calls. Um,
Well, here I think is the big question
mm,
that we have to ask here, because as far as we can tell, the only thing about that scene that directly relates to Sutek is the TARDIS.
mm.
Is Ruby's mother also a manifestation of Sutek or the Pantheon, or is she a completely unrelated thing we're going to get to next season?
It's a good question. And it's hard because this story is the legend of Ruby Sunday, but that doesn't get resolved. So because of that reason, you think, or I think that we will get an answer to that. We will find out what who Ruby's mother is, maybe even in the next episode. But on the other hand, I think could that itself just be a bit of misdirection? It's like, yeah, it's about Ruby Sunday, but oh no, it's about Sutek, and um
Well,
It's
I
hard
think
to
it's
tell.
it's probably called that because again, this is the longest scene of the episode, and it's the
Yeah, yeah,
isolated scene with the by far the most focus on it.
yeah,
Um, I it really kind of feels like I would want them to really put a lot of time into Sutek next episode
yeah.
because otherwise I'm not gonna really because otherwise the incredible job they do in this with setting him up as a massive threat,
Hmm.
I'm not gonna feel like they paid off enough. I really
Yeah.
want to get to know this guy. I want to know what he can do, and I want to know like if it doesn't if they're able to split their time evenly between him and Ruby's mum and they're not
Hmm.
related, I'm gonna feel like they put way too much of a like an imposing threat status on him because he won't be able to do very much in the 50 minutes that we've got with him.
Yeah. I mean, and will the episode be 50 minutes? Like, is there any indication it's going to be like a longer
Ooh,
special sort of a thing?
that's a good point. I don't know.
I swear to God, I think I saw a clip where RTD said that it was either this episode or the next episode is going to be like a bit longer, but I think he actually said like 55 minutes. I could be completely wrong there, maybe totally misremembering that. But yeah, I mean, if they can extend it to like 75 minutes, maybe they could devote enough time to both if they're separate. But if not, there's going to have to be some way where Ruby links with Sutek's manifestation if they're going to solve like both story arcs in one episode. Um, as to whether they'll be able to do it, we'll see how it goes, I guess.
Mm. Um,
Uh, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no. I'm trying to because like it's like the whole rumor that Ruby's leaving next season that was dispelled, right? Like we know that she's sticking around for the next season.
Yeah, so just remind me again. So was the original rumor that she was going to leave halfway through
I
next
think that was
season,
it. Yeah, that was
and
that
but
was the
in
idea at the time.
actuality, it was going to be a multi-companion season, and she'll be along for the ride. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Um.
Okay, the closest thing I can find to a length of Empire of Death is based on the fact that both Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death are going to be shown in cinemas this week in the UK,
Mm,
and
yep.
apparently the runtime for that is listed as 120 minutes. I'm factoring in
Whoa.
about like, well, yeah, but that could just be a placeholder. But if it is true, if you consider about 20 minutes of ads at the start, 45 minutes of Legend
Of
of Ruby
like
Sunday,
an episode, yeah.
yeah, it leaves Empire of Death at being a little under an hour, which is not inconsistent with other finale
Yeah.
episodes in the past. So I could easily see that being the case.
I mean, how long was the 60th? About 70 minutes?
Well, which 60th?
Oh, right. Sorry. The giggle. Excuse me.
Yeah, the giggle was yeah, it was an hour long.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I honestly, I could see Empire of Death being an hour
Mm.
long. I think it would be better if it was longer.
Oh, me too. I agree.
even if they don't solve the Ruby Sunday mystery.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to do because we've got Sutek coming back. There's a lot of mystery surrounding him. They're probably going to go into the Pantheon and more details about that a little bit more. And we've got a huge end of the world scenario. God knows how the hell the Doctor is going to save the day this time. And
Yeah.
I know
Well,
that's a cliche thing to say because
yeah.
the Doctor's facing certainly in many seasons of Doctor Who, he was facing like an end of the world or end of the universe scenario every other week. But
Mm.
still.
Well, with that in mind, let's um um with it, we've already talked about there's so much that's being set up in Empire of Death for next time.
Hmm.
Let's just have a look at some rumors for the next episode.
Oh boy, I can't wait.
They're equally ridiculous. The Trickster will appear. Susan Foreman will return. The 14th Doctor and/or Donna Noble will return. The Master will return. Sean Pertwee will appear as the Third Doctor. The Daleks will return. Davros will return. The Sandman and Gagan Rasmussen will return as part of the titular Empire of Death, led by Sutek.
Who's the Sandman?
That's from Sleep No More, the episode which is the found footage episode, which is
Right.
explicitly not a pantheon thing, and they are creations of science. So I don't know why they're being rumored as being a part of this mythical cosmic threat pantheon. They're clearly not part of it.
Yeah.
But the Daleks and Davros, why we don't know? Obviously, they're not going to be in this. They don't need
No,
to be.
there's no way. I'd be like, I know this is just our prediction thing, but if one of us predicted that Davros and the Daleks were going to return, that would easily be like a
Millions,
10 million points.
millions of points.
There's no way. There's no way
No,
that's going to happen. Like, I could even the Master, like, there's the smallest chance that could happen, but at
if
least
the master
comparatively to
is
the,
it, yeah, like if the master's coming back, it's like as a 5-second cameo at the end of the story, being like, "Oh, it was me, and I'm gonna be a
yeah.
thing later." That's
Was
it.
Susan Triad the woman who took the toy maker's tooth? Who knows, you know?
And this whole thing of like the 14th Doctor's gonna be in it, like Russell has already said implicitly there are no plans for David Tennant to reprise the role anymore.
Yeah.
So why the fuck are people still? Ah,
Mm. And I think did you? I think you said to me and Sam that like if they were going to bring back Catherine Tate, it's not just going to be like a cameo because why do that?
yeah, like
And then even then, but that's a whole other thing, right? Because that's a whole other character and a very distinct and popular character to juggle. So why would that even be an option, really?
yeah. Well, speaking of Donna, actually, like, and we did mention that Rose Noble is in this. She
Mm.
doesn't have a lot to do, which makes me think that her role is going to be more emphasized next time.
Yeah, I hope so, actually, because I did notice that a little bit. Um, I think they sort of comment on that, don't they?
Yeah,
There's some line, forgot what it was, but either way, yeah, I hopefully she'll have more to do with Empire of Death. That'd be that'd be pretty good.
yeah. Also, uh, we haven't talked about him much, but I like Morris in this. The character played by
Yeah,
Lenny
yeah,
Rush. I
he's
think
he's fun.
he's really nice.
Um, I think because I only know him from Am I Being Unreasonable?
Mhm.
He's really funny in that show. I'm kind of I wanted more of his comedic flair to come through, but he is still really entertaining and engaging as a character throughout. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, like when he's allowed to be funny, he's quite good.
Mm.
Which I would also be remiss if we didn't mention Harriet Arbinger, which is
Mm.
like that's the moment where your stomach drops when you like when Harriet's like rattling off the monologue and seems like she's possessed, and then
Mm.
I think the Ruby asks what's her surname,
Mm.
and you're just like, oh no, oh,
No,
it's Harbinger again.
I think it was the doctor who was asking on the little communicator thing. But anyway, yes, you're right. Like it's one of those gut punch moments that you kind of beg for Doctor Who, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's another thing where it's like, and it's another case of RTD perfectly setting up something in a future episode to pay off here.
Yeah,
It's just great.
it's kind of great that the first Harbinger showed up during. There's always a twist at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
A small indication, but still, like you would need that. That's like the last thing to really establish. Oh, this is a thing now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of great. It is interesting because I think even when I watched The Devil's Core, like the fact that the kid was, I think his name was like Henry Arbinger.
It
I
was
thought,
Henry Arbinger, yeah.
yeah, I thought at first I thought that was kind of dumb. Like that was just sort of a dumb bit of like a pun or something. I'm like, oh, okay, we're doing this, but it made sense for my story because I don't know that just seems like the kind of humor that they would have. Um, but the fact that it's been repeated similarly with Sutek, that also still kind of tracks, right?
Yeah.
Because it kind of goes back to again the fact that as an Osiran, Sutek sort of enjoys games and enjoys toying with mortals. There's actually a bit where because the Doctor's in his lair, but Sutak has these mental powers that can like cause physical harm to the Doctor. Like his eyes glow green, and the Doctor experiences a lot of pain. And the Sutek literally calls the Doctor, "Kneel before me," plaything of Sutek. So it it's weird, like H Arbinger. That could be um in some scenario very silly, but it all still works out, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't, given how those moments could have been, I don't feel cheated by them, which I'm really kind of glad about.
Well, it goes back to like it goes back to it goes back to the winning Doctor Who formula of doing something a little bit silly, but playing it absolutely earnestly and absolutely seriously,
Yeah,
and that's enough. That's all you need.
yeah, it's that perfect combination between seriousness and silliness that's at the heart of the show, and I'm glad
Yeah,
that RTD sort of tapped into that as soon as his second run began. Really,
yeah,
um, like he demonstrates that he understands the show really well, um, and how to navigate tone, which can be tricky in Doctor Who because apart from the fact you've got these really kind of nasty, cynical episodes of the Sixth Doctor. I think even you said, especially in Capaldi's first season, it was
yeah,
a bit all over the place, and it like would get really dark in some episodes, and you'd wonder why. So again, it's navigating that I think is uh, one of RTD's best qualities.
yeah. I've got nothing more to say about this episode. It's really, really great setup, and we'll see how it resolves itself. Um, do you have anything more to say?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think I'll bring this up. The way the Pantheon generally, like Sutek specifically, but the Pantheon generally seems to work is similarly to a concept in the in the anime and the manga Berserk. I assume you haven't watched already either,
No.
but there's a concept in it called the God Hand, and they're a collection of four beings, and they're not actual literal gods, but they're like almost like demigods sort of a thing, and they, even though they're not gods, they are very powerful beings, and they have the ability to, one, see the flow of causality, and to also influence causality by manipulating situations to get people exactly where they need to be, so that they can make these horrifying Faustian deals
Oh,
with mortals for
right.
control of, again, causality. But I think that's kind of what the Pantheon's doing here, because again, if you look at this episode with all the weird coincidences, and the fact that the letters on the screen are changing in real time, and Age Harbinger and all of that, again, it could be very silly in some ways, but there's, I think, an emphasis with the Pantheon that they do have kind of these sort of god hand powers of manipulating causality and manipulating circumstances so that the Doctor is exactly where he needs to be,
Mm,
and everything sort of aligning. So that I think it's kind of brilliant that RTD sort of tapped into that. It makes what again could be very silly moments, it makes them completely chilling and very believable, which is just kind of great, really.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
We
kind of awesome.
we briefly talked about this. Oh, hang on. Wait. Before we get to the outro,
Hmm.
Mrs. Flood.
Oh yeah.
We get a little bit more from her in this, and she's kind of dropping the facade here. At
Hmm.
this point, I think it's clear she's not an ally. Um, Straight up refusing to give Cherry Sunday her medicine is a tipper, obviously. Um,
True.
because if you're like someone
Hmm.
who's like observing if you're like an ally or a good or even just an ambivalent character, you know about Sutek and you know that he's coming.
Hmm.
If you're a nice person, you still give Cherry her fucking medicine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess in some ways, like when you've got that moment when she's just staring through the window at the skies, with that part, there may be enough ambiguity to not be decided on whether she's a friend or foe. But yeah, the fact that she refuses to give Cherry her medicine, that's pretty fucked up. So it's kind of hard to really, certainly to really sympathize with her that much. So I don't know, maybe she could be revealed as an ally in the end, but just that scene makes it look sort of less and less likely. Which
Well,
is
here's the thing.
weird because in the Church on Ruby Road, that little bit at the end, I think you even pointed out, like, it's played off as almost comedic. It's like, oh, here's this fun little thing, and oh, she's a fat character. Well, she's got to be an ally. Maybe she's a Time Lord or something. But the fact they've got this moment really makes you think, doesn't it?
Remember in Church on Ruby Road, she was also being needlessly mean to that other guy who did nothing wrong.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Literally, the moment of the little wink at the end of Church on Ruby Road is the only time we've seen her not be antagonistic to someone.
Yeah. Yeah, good God. Okay, yep, no, that's a very fair point. Yeah,
What was I saying
but I
was, sorry, there was.
sorry, yeah, go ahead.
I'm trying to figure out the dialogue that she uses in this. Okay, so she says, "Oh no, it's not medicine. It's not medicine." And she doesn't. She refuses to make Cherry a cup of tea. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Um, Something is coming, and he waits no more, is what she says.
Yeah.
Um, she's always hiding herself away. She
Mm.
once hoped she. Hang on, no, that doesn't make any sense. But that's all we get. That's everything she does in this story. It's at the moment it's still unclear if she is part of potentially even the Pantheon, but also just like the heralds of Sutek in general, or if she is an unrelated party who's sensed the coming of
I
Sutek.
wonder, because she says at at the end of the Church on Ruby Road, oh, what, haven't you ever seen a TARDIS before? Is that like foreshadowing to the fact that Sutek is possessing the TARDIS in some way? Who knows? It's hard to
I don't
tell,
know.
I think.
We'll find out, I guess.
Oh, also,
Uh-huh.
Gabriel Wolf's back.
Yep, he's reprising his role from Pyramids of Mars and Satan Pit.
Yeah,
Good
and I
God,
didn't,
he's still incredible. He sounds
I
so
didn't,
chilling and
yeah,
foreboding.
because I went back and watched it a second time, and there's bits where the voice is being manipulated a little bit, but then there's a bit where it's clear that the only manipulation they're doing with the voice is maybe adding a bit of reverb, so
Yeah,
he's still got it, yeah, like he's what 91, and he's
yes,
still got that quality in his voice, and it's just awesome. And
incredible.
I did recognize it as the voice of the Beast, but I didn't fully recognize it as the voice of Sutek, so I didn't know that he played Sutek in the original story. So that's cool that, after 49 years, he's still going at it. It's kind of great. Um, yeah, it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's great. Um, we're not going to give this episode a score yet. It's
Yeah,
way too wrapped up in setup and everything. Like we normally do for multi-part finales. We normally rank them separately because normally there is something distinct about each episode. I don't know if it's possible to do that yet. If we get to the end of next episode and they are incredibly distinct from each other, we might revisit that and rank both
yeah,
separately. But for now, I think we should just hold off because, like I said, this is a very unique episode for us. We don't know what's coming,
mm,
and I just kind of want to ride this out. At the moment, I'm very, very happy with what we're getting, and I'm very optimistic for how it's going to resolve itself.
mm-hmm,
But we'll
for
see.
sure. Um, can we talk about the points for a minute?
Yep, just about to get there. Let's go to you first. So Ruby is a messianic figure, key to saving the universe. Might end up happening. In fact,
Yeah.
she's stuck in a time window which has turned itself on. That might play into the resolution in some way. You may end up getting those points. A point that you do get is at least one returning villain in the form of Sutek. There's your 500 points. Well, hang on. We'll get there. So along with your other points you got from the appearance of Mrs. Flood and the 500 we had from that bet earlier on, this brings your total so far to 1,250 points.
Neat.
And join us next time for the. Okay, fine. We'll get to this. I obviously had 500 points on the line for no returning villains. That's out the window. I lose those points. Another thing we have to talk about is the 50 points that I have for supernatural elements are the Toymaker's minions. As it turns out, they're Sutek's minions. Do I lose those points as well?
So what?
So in this episode, the Sutek is described as the father and mother and other of the Pantheon.
Yeah.
So above the Toymaker.
Mm.
And to be fair, I got those points from Devil's Chord. In that one, Maestro was clearly doing their own thing, and Maestro was clearly like, "Thank God you got rid of my father. I didn't like that guy."
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's accurate to describe the Pantheon as the Toymaker's minions, because certainly the Mara isn't a minion of the Toymaker.
No, and neither is the Trickster. Surely.
Yeah, neither is the Trickster. I don't think I get those points either.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think I do.
Hmm.
And I'm also happy about that, because I'd rather have 0 points than 50. Because 50 points is just so safe. 50 points is like you put in something that everyone knew was going to happen so you could get something on the board. I'm almost happy that the show proved me wrong on that. I'm glad I don't have those points. But it does put me at a hot 0 at the moment.
Okay. Right.
So the predictions that I have that might still work out. Major character death in the finale. It's looking likely. I mean, I don't know necessarily if there's an easy target, but, it's called Empire of Death. We might end up seeing a sacrifice play.
Yeah. Do you think, this is a small thing, but, do you think Kate Stewart is a possibility?
I hope not. I don't think it's going to be her.
Yeah. I want to see her in more stuff.
Me too. 400 points on the line for a surprise master reveal. Again, not really looking likely at this point. If not just because it's very overbloated if they do it. If they do it, it'll be in the last, second or 10 seconds of the story. And I'm almost positive at this point that I'm not going to get these 900,000 points for revealing Lenny Rush as one of the doctors from Division. So I'm just going to mark that off as a incorrect right now. I'm just going to immediately flag that as a no. So the points as they stand at the moment, you're leading 1250 to 0. It's pretty insurmountable at this point. I don't think I'm going to pit you at the post here. Literally, I don't have enough points from the predictions I have currently available to beat this total. The only hope that I have for winning is if both of my last predictions come true and we somehow remove more of your points. Like if Mrs. Flood is in a bigger capacity, for example.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's likely.
Sure.
At the very least, I'm happy that the 500 points from our bet seem pretty insignificant in the result of this.
Yeah. Oh, that was pretty funny because I really thought that we weren't going to get a returning villain until again the last 10 to 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because don't get me wrong, I didn't predict Sutek, or at least not definitely, but I thought, oh, this has got to be like a returning villain moment. Like they're building up to be so much. Yeah, like it's got to be something. So that was very funny. That was really, really funny.
Yeah, what was it? Hang on. So yeah, the episode I watched it as soon as I could on Saturday morning, and I assume you did the same because I get a message from you at
I think it was like.
No, sorry. You messaged our Doctor Who group chat with me, you and Sam, saying that you've watched the episode, and then I immediately sent you a message saying it was nice to having those 500 points for returning villains, and all you said was, "I'm so happy."
Yes.
You wasted literally 0 time gloating about it.
Okay. No. I want to clarify that because I now realize how that sounded. That wasn't the reason I was so happy about it. It's cool. And I do apologize if throughout the last 10 minutes I've sounded slightly smug. It's just
No.
I don't win at anything normally, so this is a whole different thing. That's not the reason why I said I was so happy. I was so happy because Sutek came back. Because even if I was predicting a return villain, I wasn't predicting Sutek, and I really like the Pyramids of Mars. That's why I was so happy.
if you haven't flagged Pyramids of Mars as one of the classic era stories to watch when we get back into those, then
Oh, we will. No, we are definitely doing that.
yeah, good, good. I would love to see the origins of this character. Now that
Yeah,
I know, now that they're important again, and it's been
yeah.
also really great watching like all of my recommended videos, not all of them, but like heaps of my recommended videos on YouTube being like this clip from Pyramids of Mars, this scene from Pyramids of Mars. Remember this from
It'll
Pyramids of Mars?
it will be interesting to revisit it because it's again, I only watched part 4 the other night, and that's after years of not watching it. But even when I was a kid, I would only watch part 4, but that was only because that's when Sutek shows up the most.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's just my sort of dumb child brain at the time. But still, he is a really, really, really good villain. There's a great, great bit where where the Doctor's talking about how he views like sentient life, and I think hang on, I've got it fucking written down here. Hang on. Nope, maybe I don't.
Great.
I think the Doctor says something to the effect of all sapient life are our kith, Sutek, and then Sutek said, yeah, Horus held that view, I refute it. And then in the end, the Doctor says to him, you use your powers for evil, and then Sutek comes back with one of my favorite villain lines, I think in all Doctor Who, he's like, what is it? Evil? Your evil is my good. I am Sutek the Destroyer. Where I tread I leave nothing but dust and darkness. I find that good. And it's like, yeah,
Oh wow.
such,
Okay.
such a great line. It's so disturbing and freaky, and it's just, it's great stuff. Yeah, we are definitely going to have to look at the Pyramids of Mars sometime this year.
Hell yeah.
Be fun.
Well, next time we'll be watching Empire of Death, the final episode of the season. And I really hope they stick the landing with this because if they do, it's one of the most consistent seasons the show has ever had.
Yeah, I think, would you say that it's, because I know that particularly Capaldi had some pretty good seasons, but would you
Uh-huh.
say this is certainly up there with one of the most consistent seasons in at least the revival?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Like without
yeah.
question. Like I said, assuming this sticks to landing, because this could pull a season 9 where every episode ruled until Hellbent came along and fucked everything over.
Hey, look, Moffat's not writing it, so that's probably not
Yeah,
going to happen.
maybe. We'll see.
I'm sorry to be shitty about that, but like,
Fine.
I think I've said it myself. I think one of the problems I have with Moffat's writing is he's really good at the first part of two-parters, but then he really drops the ball in the second part.
Yeah.
With a number of them. So, um, yeah, but hopefully they'll stick the landing. They won't fumble it
Mm.
because that'd suck. It really would. Um, Also a totally small and different thing. Um, is the trickster? Is he the one who causes the events in turn left, or
Yes.
am I okay? Right.
Well, it's not him directly, but it's like essentially one of his minions.
Yeah. Okay. Because I remembered something being mentioned about that. I think in the episode, or because I know like the trickster himself doesn't actually ever show up in Doctor Who. He's only in
No.
the Sarah Jane Adventures. So yeah. Still, that's neat. Um, yeah. Empire of Death next week.
Yep.
Bring it on.
Until then, I'm Alex,
And I'm so happy.
and congratulations on your victory in season 14's prediction game.
Thank you.
Calling it early. Everyone, cash in your betting slips now. This is one for Fitz.
Thank you.